call came when I least expected it. My youngest son, a pilot, was already in the cockpit, preparing for takeoff. His voice came through the phone, urgent and trembling. "Mom," he asked, "is my sister-in-law with you? Right now? At the house?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes, she's here. She's upstairs." "Why?" Silence stretched on the other end. Then his whisper cut through me like ice. "Mom, that's impossible. She boarded my flight 10 minutes ago. I saw her face. She checked in with her ID. She's on this plane." My blood ran cold. For a moment, I thought I misheard him. But no, his voice was clear. My daughter-in-law couldn't be in two places at once. And yet, one version of her was under his watch at 30,000 feet, while another stood in my home. I remember gripping the phone so tightly, my hand ached. The sound of my own breath filled the silence, shallow and uneven. I turned my head slowly toward the staircase. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Deliberate, heavy, descending the stairs inside my house. I froze. My son's voice was still whispering in my ear. "Mom, listen to me. If she's with you, then who is sitting behind me on this plane?" My mind spun out of control. Two versions of the same person. One in the sky, one in my house. Both accounted for at the same time. The impossible had just entered my life, and I wasn't ready. Before I could process another thought, my phone buzzed again. A second call. I pulled it away from my ear and felt my chest seize. The screen flashed her name. My daughter-in-law. She was calling me from inside the house. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because at that moment, I realized I wasn't just caught between confusion and fear. I was standing at the edge of something darker. A secret so carefully hidden that it had slipped into my family like poison. And now, I had to face it. How do you explain the unexplainable? How do you protect your family when reality itself splits in two? One version of her on the plane, another version under my roof, both watching, both waiting. That night became the beginning of the unraveling. A story of betrayal, double lives, and danger that lurked closer than I ever dared to imagine. And before it was over, I would learn two devastating shocks and one ironclad truth that no mother, no wife, no parent should ever have to face. If family secrets terrify you as much as they do me, like this video, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Because you're about to hear what happened when reality split apart in my own home. I used to believe my life was simple, safe, predictable. Looking back now, I realize that belief was my greatest mistake. Because nothing about the life I thought I knew was what it seemed. Every morning, I woke up in the same house I had lived in for decades. The walls carried the laughter of my children when they were young. The garden out back bore the marks of my husband's steady hands. Though these days it was my son who took over the heavy work whenever he was home. The rhythm of my days was always the same. Coffee in the kitchen, a short walk around the yard, and small chores that filled the hours. My youngest son was the pride of our family. A pilot. Every time I saw him step out in uniform, with his cap in his hand and the sun flashing on his badge, I felt a wave of pride so strong it brought tears to my eyes. He had worked for years to reach that cockpit. Study, sacrifice, endless hours. I told everyone who would listen that my boy flew the skies. And every time I heard the roar of a plane above the house, I wondered if it was his hands on the controls. His wife, my daughter-in-law, was another reason I felt secure. She was warm, soft-spoken, and always quick to help around the house. She had a way of making tea just the way I liked it. Whenever she stopped by, she seemed at ease in the kitchen, moving as if she had lived here her whole life. I welcomed her presence, and I trusted her, perhaps too much. Our family lived in a cycle of movement and return. My son traveled constantly, gone for days at a time. His wife often stayed with me during his flights. We became companions in his absence. She helped me with errands. She joined me in long talks at night when the silence grew heavy. I thought of her as my own daughter. But I have learned that routine can be a trap. When every day looks the same, you stop questioning the small things that do not fit. There were late-night texts that she would excuse with a quick smile. "Oh, it's nothing. A friend." I never pressed her, though her eyes sometimes flickered with something I could not name. There were receipts that appeared in the trash for things I knew she had not told my son about. Hotel restaurants, gas stations in towns far away from our home. I assumed she had kept them from a past trip, or that she was careless with her purse. I told myself not to pry. Then there was the drawer in the guest room. She had started using that room whenever she stayed with me. At first it was harmless, clothes, books, little things she kept there. But one day I noticed the drawer had a small lock on it. I laughed to myself and thought, she wants her privacy. But part of me wondered why someone would lock a drawer in their in-laws' house. I ignored it. Again and again, I ignored these signs. Looking back, I see how blind I was. Each small thing was a thread dangling from the fabric of my life. I could have pulled at it and revealed what was hiding beneath, but I did not. I told myself families trust each other. I told myself that some things are better left unquestioned. I was proud of my son and comfortable with his wife. That pride and comfort became my shield against suspicion. I never asked what she did when she slipped out in the evening with her phone pressed to her ear. I never questioned why she sometimes came back with a different perfume lingering on her clothes. I told myself not to stir trouble. Our family dinners felt ordinary. My son, when he was home, would talk about his flights, the long routes, the demanding schedules. She would smile at him as though her world began and ended with his words. I believed it. I believed her devotion. I believed in the life we had built as a family. The house itself lulled me into safety. The ticking clock in the hall, the garden that bloomed each spring, the steady rhythm of footsteps on the stairs. I thought I knew every sound, every movement within these walls. I thought nothing could surprise me here, but I was wrong. The truth was already pressing against the edges of my days. It waited in the locked drawer. It hid in the late texts and the receipts. It followed me in the shifting glances I sometimes caught between my son and his wife. At the time, though, I kept my silence. I chose peace over confrontation. I chose comfort over doubt. And in doing so, I allowed the shadows to grow. I tell you this now because I know how easy it is to ignore the small warnings. We all do it. We tell ourselves it is nothing. We tell ourselves we are overthinking. But those small things add up. They gather in the corners of our lives until one day they step into the open and tear everything apart. That was the life I thought I knew. A safe house, a loving family, a daughter-in-law I trusted, a son I admired. It all looked ordinary, but it was only a mask. The day the call came from the cockpit, I realized how fragile my world truly was, and I could never go back to believing in the life I thought I knew. The day it happened began like any other. The air was still, the house was quiet, and I was sitting in the living room with a cup of tea when my phone rang. The name flashing on the screen made me smile. My youngest son, calling from the cockpit. I always loved hearing his voice before takeoff. It reminded me that even though he was thousands of feet in the air, he was still my boy. "Mom," he whispered, his voice lower than usual, the hum of engines loud behind him. "I need you to answer something honestly. Is Amanda with you right now?" The question caught me off guard. I looked toward the kitchen where she had been only a moment before, washing her cup. "Yes," I said slowly, frowning. "She's here in the house. Why?" There was a pause on the line. I could hear muffled chatter in the background, the clipped voices of flight attendants, the beeping of instruments. Then my son's voice returned, sharper, almost trembling. "That's impossible! She's on this plane! I saw her! She boarded 10 minutes ago." My breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I told you she's here. I saw her not 5 minutes ago." "I'm telling you, Mom," he said, his whisper urgent now. "She walked past me. She had her boarding pass, her ID, everything. She's in seat 14 amperes. I saw her face. I greeted her. I know my own sister-in-law." The room tilted around me. My hand shook as I held the phone tighter. I could still hear water dripping in the kitchen sink where Amanda had been moments before. Yet my son was describing her presence on a plane miles away. "That doesn't make sense," I said, my voice unsteady. "She is right here. I can call her now if you want proof." "Mom," he whispered again. urgency tightening every syllable. Listen to me. She's wearing a blue coat with silver buttons, the one Nathan bought her for Christmas last year. She had her brown leather bag over her shoulder, the same bag she carries everywhere. I couldn't mistake her. I know her voice, her smile. She even asked me not to mention seeing her to you. That's what scared me. My heart slammed against my chest. I turned toward the stairs, straining to hear any sound from above. The house felt suddenly enormous, every shadow suspicious, every creak alive. You must be mistaken, I said, though my words rang hollow even to me. Maybe it was someone who looked like her. No, he said firmly. I swear to you, it was Amanda, and there is more. When she handed over her boarding pass, I saw the name, her full name, Mom. It wasn't a mistake. I pressed a hand to my forehead, feeling dizzy. Then how is she here? How is that possible? Silence stretched between us, broken only by the steady thrum of the engines on his end of the call. Mom, he finally said, his voice tight with fear. Go check. Make sure she is really there with you. Don't let her know I called. Don't let her see you doubt her. I stood slowly, every movement heavy. The phone was hot against my ear, my son's words echoing inside me. I took a step toward the stairs, then froze. From above I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming down one at a time. I held my breath. Mom? My son whispered again. What do you see? The footsteps grew louder. I clutched the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. My eyes fixed on the staircase, waiting for her to appear. My mind fought itself, trapped between two truths. My son swore he saw her on the flight, but I swore she was in my house. The shadow of her figure stretched onto the wall before I saw her face. And then she appeared, calm and casual, as if nothing were wrong. She smiled faintly, her hair tucked behind her ear, her hand resting on the rail. Everything all right? She asked lightly. My throat closed. I could not answer. Mom, my son pressed, his voice a strained whisper. Is she there? Yes, I croaked. My hand shook so hard I thought I might drop the phone. She's here, but she should not have been. Amanda tilted her head, studying me. Who's on the phone? I swallowed hard. Your brother, I forced out, my voice trembling. Her eyes flickered, the smallest change, but I saw it. A flash of something sharp, something unreadable, before she smiled again. Tell him I said hello, she said softly, stepping past me toward the kitchen. Her footsteps faded, but the pounding in my chest did not. On the line, my son's voice came again, more desperate than before. Mom, listen to me. She's here too. She's sitting in front of me. I swear it. My body turned cold. My son's truth against my own eyes. Two impossible realities colliding in the space of a single phone call. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone and run. But instead I whispered, what do I do? Stay calm, he answered quickly. Don't let her know you're suspicious. I'll land this plane and figure it out. Just be careful. I lowered the phone slowly, my hand trembling. From the kitchen I could hear the sound of a spoon stirring in a cup, the clink of porcelain. Normal sounds, ordinary sounds. Yet nothing about this moment felt ordinary. Two places, one woman, one truth I could not yet see. And for the first time, I realized my home was no longer a place of safety. It was a place of shadows. The footsteps pressed down on the staircase one by one, slow and deliberate, each step echoing like a warning. My son's voice still hummed faintly through the phone in my hand, but I could hardly hear him over the pounding of my own heartbeat. I stared at the shadows stretching along the wall, tall and bent, thrown by the hallway lamp. Then the phone buzzed again in my palm. The screen lit up, with a number that turned my stomach cold. Amanda. Her number was calling me. My throat tightened. I lifted the phone slowly, staring at it as if it had betrayed me. The name flashed again. Amanda. Yet Amanda was the one stepping closer, her shape just out of sight around the corner of the stairwell. Mom? My son whispered again from the cockpit, but I couldn't answer. My hand shook too badly. The ringing stopped. Silence. Then, almost immediately, it started again. The same number. The same name. Amanda. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe. My legs trembled as I moved slowly toward the base of the stairs. The air in the hallway felt heavy, almost damp, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. The sound of fabric brushed against wood. A shoe against the step. I caught a faint scent in the air. Something familiar. The sharp, crisp smell of her coat. She always wore that lavender perfume when she left the house. But this scent felt stronger, closer, almost cloying, as if she were standing right in front of me. I tightened my grip on the phone and whispered into it, hoping my son could still hear. "She's coming down, and she's calling me from inside the house." He didn't respond at first. Then his voice broke through, low and strained. "Stay calm. Do not confront her yet, please, Mom." But I couldn't stop myself from moving. I stepped into the hallway, the old wooden floor creaking beneath my weight. The lamp on the side table flickered slightly, its light pooling weakly over the mirror that hung on the opposite wall. I froze when I saw it. In the mirror's glass, caught in the dim light, was a figure at the top of the stairs. Amanda, or someone who wore her face. But there was something off. Her movements were slower, her posture stiff, her eyes strangely fixed, as though she wasn't looking at me but through me. I turned my head toward the stairs themselves. They were empty. The air stirred, cold against my cheek. My breath hitched. When I looked back into the mirror, the figure was still there, descending one step at a time. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping the phone. The call from Amanda's number stopped again. The silence pressed hard around me, broken only by the faint sound of the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. I forced myself to whisper, "Who's there?" No answer. The next step creaked. My chest heaved as I took another step backward, my shoulder brushing against the hallway wall. My fingers grazed the framed photographs hanging there. Smiling faces. Family gatherings. Amanda herself, standing beside my son in a photo from last Christmas. Her expression in that picture was warm, alive, real, but the face in the mirror was not the same. The phone buzzed again. I nearly cried out. Amanda's number flashed once more. My hand shook so hard that I almost dropped the device to the floor. This time I answered. My voice cracked. "Hello?" Silence. Then a low whisper, faint but unmistakable. "I see you." The phone slipped from my hand and clattered onto the wooden floor, the sound loud in the suffocating stillness. The mirror still showed the figure descending, one step at a time. Even though the staircase itself remained bare, I bent to grab the phone, my breath shallow, every muscle in my body screaming at me to run. But I couldn't. I had to know what was happening. I pressed the phone against my ear again, my voice shaking. "Who are you?" The line clicked dead. The next sound came from the coat rack by the front door. A soft thud, like fabric settling, followed by the faintest rustle. I turned my head sharply. Amanda's coat hung there, the blue one with silver buttons, and the air around it carried that same lavender scent. But the sleeves swayed gently, as if someone had just taken their hands out of the pockets. I staggered back, my shoulder hitting the hallway lamp. The light flickered again, dimming almost to darkness before flaring back up. My reflection in the mirror looked pale, wild-eyed, almost unrecognizable. And behind me in that reflection, standing in the hallway where no one stood, was the shadow of a woman. I spun around, nothing. I felt trapped between what my eyes showed me and what my mind screamed couldn't be real. My son's voice crackled faintly through the phone again, urging me to respond, but I couldn't form words. My body locked in place. I wanted to call for help, to dial the police, to run out into the street screaming. But another part of me needed answers. I needed to know if the woman in my house was Amanda, a stranger, or something worse. My hand hovered over the doorknob, leading to the basement, the place the footsteps now seemed to echo from. My breath came fast, uneven, my chest rising and falling in shallow bursts. I pressed my forehead against the door, the wood cool against my skin, and whispered to myself, "What are you?" The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Then came a sound I will never forget. A faint laugh, almost childlike, drifting up from the dark below. I did not sleep that night. My mind kept circling back to the impossible truth. My daughter-in-law was on a flight with my son, and at the same time, she was in my house. The air in my bedroom felt heavy. Every creak of the floorboards made me think she was moving again somewhere below. By morning, I had convinced myself I needed evidence. I went downstairs, careful with every step, and searched the living room where I had first seen the reflection in the mirror. The coat still hung in the hall. Her perfume lingered faintly in the air. I touched the fabric to make sure I wasn't imagining it. It was real. She had been here. I opened her handbag that sat neatly by the couch. Inside were her ID, her driver's license, and her phone. My hands shook as I pulled the license close to my face. The photo was her. The address was hers. Yet I had spoken to my son hours earlier, and he swore she had boarded the aircraft with him. I decided to test the phone. I dialed my number from hers. The call came through instantly. My heart skipped. The device in my hand was live, active, and present. But the same number had called me last night while I stood on the staircase. I checked the call log. The outgoing call was there, marked with the exact time. That was impossible. I reached out to my son as soon as his flight landed. His voice was hoarse. He had not slept either. "Mom," he said, "I swear she was on my plane. She showed her boarding pass. She even leaned in and whispered a joke only the two of us would understand." "What joke?" I asked. He hesitated. "She reminded me of the first time she got sick on a flight to Miami. She said she would never let me forget how I had to get a flight attendant to bring her ginger ale." I froze. He was right. I never knew that story. It was a detail only a husband and wife would share. Yet the woman in my house had her ID, her purse, her scent, and her phone. I went through her things more carefully. There were receipts from the grocery store dated yesterday afternoon. One was time-stamped at 3:05 p.m. That was the exact time my son said she was boarding. The contradiction was sharp, undeniable. I checked her social media accounts. Photos from yesterday evening showed her smiling in the kitchen with the kids, tagged and shared by neighbors who had stopped by. Yet the timestamp placed those uploads while she was supposedly 30,000 feet in the air. I opened a folder in the locked drawer she always kept by the study desk. I had found the spare key earlier when searching for proof. Inside were documents I did not expect. Duplicate IDs with slight variations in her name, insurance forms under different addresses, and even a second passport. My mouth went dry as I flipped through the pages. None of this made sense for the woman I thought I knew. I confronted my son with this. He grew silent. "Mom, maybe we're not dealing with her at all," he whispered. "What if it's someone else? A twin? An imposter? Someone who knows her life well enough to fool us both." End quote. I wanted to dismiss the thought, but the evidence built around me like a cage. The smell in the hall, the phone records, the grocery receipts, and now the duplicate IDs. All signs pointed to something deliberate. I asked myself who would benefit. Money, revenge, insurance fraud? The thought chilled me. If someone had stolen her identity, why keep me involved? Why appear in my house, in full view? Why risk being caught when she could have stayed hidden? Every answer I reached only raised more questions. And yet one truth began to surface. This was not random. Someone wanted me to notice. Someone wanted me to doubt the woman I had welcomed into my home. That night, I locked every door and double-checked every window. But even as I tried to rest, my son texted me the final blow. He had obtained the official flight manifest. Her name, her seat number, and her boarding time were printed clearly. No mistake. She was on that plane. I stared at the document on my screen until my eyes blurred. Two sets of evidence now stood in front of me, both ironclad, both true in their own way. One placed her under my roof. The other placed her in the sky. Which one was my real daughter-in-law? And who was the woman moving quietly through the dark halls of my house? Family secrets are the wounds that never fully heal. Subscribe now if you don't want to miss the truth. I woke before sunrise. My chest was heavy with the same question that had haunted me through the night. Who was the woman in my house, and why was she trying so hard to be my daughter-in-law? The first clue came when I logged into my online banking to pay a bill. A line of transfers stood out. They were small, nothing dramatic, but each one had gone to an account under a name I did not recognize. The transfers had been approved by my daughter-in-law's login. I knew she used my laptop sometimes, but these dates lined up with the time she was supposed to be out of the house. It was a trail that pointed toward careful, deliberate moves. Later that morning, my neighbor Mrs. Lee came to drop off some homemade bread. She asked casually, "Did your daughter-in-law find her wallet? She called me last week asking if I had seen it in my yard." I froze. My daughter-in-law never lost her wallet. Not once in all the years I had known her. She guarded it as if it were her lifeline. "When exactly did she call you?" I asked. Mrs. Lee frowned. "2 nights ago. Around 7, she sounded off different. I assumed she was stressed. My son was in the air that night, and I had been home alone." The call Mrs. Lee described only deepened the mystery. Someone was reaching out to the people around me, weaving themselves into our lives using her name. I began searching the house more carefully. In the back of a drawer in the study, I found a second phone. It was old but still charged. When I powered it on, dozens of recent messages appeared. Some were numbers I didn't recognize. Others were copies of conversations I had seen on my son's phone, but with subtle differences. In one, the sender claimed she was delayed at work. In another, she mentioned traveling for a few days. None of those stories matched the truth. I called my son immediately. His voice was raw, like mine. He had been combing through his own records. "Mom," he said, "I checked my credit card. There's a ticket purchase from last week under her name. A flight out of the country. She never told me about it." "Do you have the details?" I asked. Yes. It was one way. To Toronto. Bought the day before she supposedly boarded my flight. A chill spread through me. Why would she need another ticket when she already had her boarding pass? Unless, of course, there were 2 of them moving under the same identity. We decided to pool everything we had. My son emailed me the boarding manifest and the flight purchase. I shared the hidden phone, the bank transfers, and the strange call to Mrs. Lee. Piece by piece, the story built itself, and it was not one of simple mistakes. It was a story of someone staging a double life with precision. As I went through her belongings again, I caught myself thinking about how much I had ignored. The late-night texts she always hid when I walked into the room. The extra receipts that she claimed were for groceries but never matched what was in the kitchen. The time she left early and returned late, always smiling, always explaining it away. I had chalked it up to the stress of family life. I had trusted the routine, and in doing so, I had let blind spots grow large enough to hide an entire second life. That night, I sat in the living room with every door locked, the curtains drawn tight. I held the hidden phone in one hand and my own in the other. Every sound in the house put me on edge. My mind replayed the footsteps on the stairs, the mirror reflection, the perfume still hanging in the air. This was no longer about curiosity. It was about survival. Whoever had entered my home had access to documents, money, and my trust. And if they were bold enough to walk my halls, they were bold enough to do worse. I thought about confronting her directly. The idea burned in me. To demand answers. To push her until the mask cracked. But another voice whispered inside me. If she was dangerous, if she had already gone to such lengths to live another life, what would she do if I threatened to expose her? I sat in the dark and weighed my choices. I could confront her and risk everything. Or I could call the police and admit that I had been fooled, that my family had been living with a stranger. Neither path promised safety. As the clock struck midnight, my son called once more. "Mom," he said softly, "this is bigger than us. Someone is playing a game, and we don't know the rules yet." I gripped the phone tighter. My voice came out as a whisper, steady but trembling inside. Then we find out the rules before they destroy us. The moment the truth began to crack open, it did not come with a scream or a bang. It arrived with paper, records, and details that should never have been able to exist side by side. My son and I sat on opposite ends of a video call, his uniform still on from the flight. His face looked older than I remembered, his eyes bloodshot from both exhaustion and disbelief. He held up a copy of the boarding manifest. "Mom, look. This is her name. This is her seat. She boarded the flight at 8:12 p.m. I watched her walk down the aisle with my own eyes. I nodded, but my chest tightened. She was here with me at 8:12. I heard her put her mug in the sink. I heard her steps on the stairs. I even smelled the lavender perfume she always wears. The contradiction should have been impossible. Yet there it was. The next blow came from medical records. My son had a contact in the hospital who pulled old checkup files for his wife. Blood type, allergy notes, prescriptions. They were exact duplicates of what I had seen in the kitchen cabinet, tucked in folders she kept. But then, another set surfaced from a different clinic across town. Same name, same birth date, but a different blood type. A detail too small to fake. How many versions of her exist? I whispered, scrolling through the documents. It's either a twin, my son said flatly, or we've been living with someone who isn't who she says she is. I wanted to reject it, to insist that no one could keep such a dangerous lie for so long. But as I searched my phone later that night, another clue appeared. 2 separate photos had been posted online within minutes of each other. In one, she was at a cafe downtown, time-stamped by a friend's tag. In the other, she was smiling in our backyard, our house clearly behind her, same date, same hour. My stomach turned. Either the world was playing tricks on us, or there were 2 of her moving in parallel. The evidence began piling faster than I could process it. A neighbor swore he saw her at the market the same morning she supposedly left on an early flight. A friend messaged me asking why she was at a charity dinner when she had told the family she was sick in bed. Each contradiction was another nail in the coffin of the life I thought I knew. That night, I heard her in the kitchen. She was humming, pouring tea, moving through the house as if nothing had changed. My hand tightened around the hidden phone I had found earlier. On its screen glowed messages that hinted at 2 different lives. Some threads spoke to my son, his name filled with affection. Others addressed numbers saved under cryptic titles. In one she wrote, "Don't worry. They suspect nothing. I have everything under control." I wanted to storm into the kitchen and scream. I wanted to demand which version of her was real, but I held myself still. I remembered the shovel in the other story. I remembered the footsteps on the stairs. Anger could cost me the truth. The next morning, my son called with a plan. His voice was steady now, almost professional. "We need to set a trap," he said. "Either she shows herself, or we catch whoever is pretending to be her." "What do you mean?" I asked. "We arrange a situation where she has to be in 2 places at once, something she cannot control. I'll get her boarding pass photo from the airline camera at the gate. You watch her movements at home. If she's here with you while she's also documented there, then we'll know." The thought chilled me. And if the one here realizes we are watching, then at least we'll have proof. Proof that will force her to explain. We worked out the details like 2 detectives rather than mother and son. He would coordinate with his crew to capture the boarding process on video. I would install a small camera in the hallway under the pretense of fixing the Wi-Fi. Together, we would collect evidence that no one could deny. The following evening, my heart pounded with every sound in the house. I knew the camera was recording. I knew my son was waiting at the gate of another flight where his wife was scheduled to board. My phone buzzed once, twice, 3 times with updates from him. At 7:49 p.m., he texted, "She's here, just past security." At 7:55 p.m., he sent a photo. Her face, her coat, her carry-on bag. At 8:01 p.m., I heard the back door close. Shoes were set on the mat. Then her voice, calm and casual. "I'm home. Long day." The impossible had become undeniable. I sat frozen on the couch, listening to her footsteps approach. My son's video came through at the same moment. It showed her stepping onto the jet bridge. Yet in my house, the sound of her humming grew louder. The air itself seemed to split in half. 2 lives, 2 versions of one woman, and we were caught in the middle of a lie that threatened to consume us. My son's voice came through the phone again, steady but sharp. "Mom, we have her. Now the question is, which one is the real her?" I gripped the phone until my knuckles whitened. "Then we draw her out. Tonight, the truth begins to answer itself." I had never prepared for war before, but that night I felt like a soldier who knew the battlefield was her own home. My son and I spoke in hushed tones over a secure line, careful not to arouse suspicion. The plan was simple in theory, but dangerous in practice. Catch her in a moment she could not explain. Force her to choose between two identities. And let the truth bleed out. I walked through the house, setting the stage. A camera in the hallway. Another in the living room lamp. My son had insisted we involve the police, but I hesitated. The shame of telling strangers that I might be living with the ghost of my daughter-in-law was too much. I wanted proof first. I wanted the truth in my own hands before I gave it to anyone else. The clock struck 7:30. My son was already at the airport, uniform pressed, face set. He texted me a photo of the boarding gate. She's here again, carrying the same bag as last night. My heart pounded. The woman in my house had gone upstairs to shower an hour earlier. I heard the water running, the faint scrape of bottles shifting on the shelf. The trap was ready. At 7:58, my phone buzzed with a video clip. It showed her walking down the jet bridge, ticket in hand, smile faint but unmistakable. My son's voice followed the call. She is boarding now. Secure your end, Mom. Do not let her slip away. I forced my hands to steady. The shower upstairs stopped. The door creaked. I heard soft humming, the same melody she always carried, casual and careless, as if nothing in the world could touch her. I sat in the living room, phone recording in plain view. When she descended the stairs, I looked straight at her and said, "How was your flight?" Her body stiffened for a fraction of a second. Most people would have missed it, but I saw it. A shadow flickered across her face before the mask returned. She smiled. "What flight?" "I have been here all evening." I pressed play on my phone. The clip from the boarding gate filled the silence. Her own face, her own clothes, walking onto the plane less than 15 minutes ago. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. "You should not have seen that," she whispered. My pulse raced. "Who are you?" She sat down across from me, folded her hands, and for the first time since I had met her, she did not pretend. The smile vanished. The calm cracked. "My name is not what you think it is," she said. "The woman you saw on that plane is my sister, my twin. We were separated years ago, but I brought her back. We trade places when it suits us. One of us at home, one of us away. Nobody notices. Nobody asks." My chest tightened. "Why? Why lie to us? Why deceive my son?" Her voice sharpened. "Because your son gives me a life she could never have. A house, respect, money. We shared everything and no one ever knew." I could hardly breathe. All the little things I had ignored flooded back at once. The odd receipts, the locked drawer, the perfume that sometimes smelled stronger than usual. 2 women wearing one mask. My phone buzzed again. It was my son. I put it on speaker. His voice filled the room. "She is on the plane. I am looking right at her. Who are you speaking to, Mom?" The woman's face paled. For the first time, she looked afraid. "Turn it off," she hissed. "Turn it off now." I refused. "No, this ends tonight." Her composure broke. She stood up, pacing, her hands trembling. "You don't understand. She owes money. Dangerous people. They were coming for her." I let her take my place so they would not find me. She needed me. She needed my life. And I needed her to keep the balance. Her words tumbled out, messy and desperate. The perfect daughter-in-law mask was gone. What stood before me was a woman cornered, weighed down by secrets she could no longer carry. My son's voice cut through again. "Mom, step away from her. The police are waiting at the gate for the one here with me. You need to get out of that house." But I stayed seated. My hands no longer shook. I had been afraid for too long. Now I wanted the full truth. I stared at her and said, "So which one are you? The wife my son married? Or the shadow who crept into his home?" Tears welled in her eyes, but they did not fall. "I am both, and neither. He never knew which of us he was holding at night. He never asked, because he did not want to know." My stomach churned. The betrayal was not only hers. It was built into the silence, the blindness, the willingness of everyone to accept the surface story. A knock thundered at the door. She flinched. My son's voice confirmed, "They're there, Mom. Let them in." I stood, phone in hand, and walked to the door. Behind me, she whispered one last plea. If you give me up, you destroy us both. He will lose everything. Do you want that on your conscience? I turned the knob. The officers stepped in, their presence filling the room with authority. She did not resist. She only looked at me, eyes burning with anger and sorrow, as if I had betrayed her when all along she had been the betrayer. As they led her out, I finally exhaled. The trap had worked. The truth had been forced into the open. But the victory felt hollow. My son's life lay in ruins. My family shattered by lies we never chose. That night, as I sat in the quiet, her words kept echoing in my head. Both? And neither. The face at the table belonged to my daughter-in-law, but the soul behind it was a stranger. The house was silent after they took her away, but my heart was anything but still. Every corner of the living room still carried her presence. The coat draped on the chair, the half-empty teacup on the counter, the faint smell of perfume clinging to the curtains. For years I had believed I knew the woman my son married. Now, I could not even tell if the one I loved at family dinners was the same one who had smiled at me that very morning. The police sat with me for hours. They asked for recordings, bank papers, and any strange receipts I could remember. I handed them the hidden phone I had found earlier that week, the one filled with calls to numbers I did not recognize. They promised to track it, to trace the network, to untangle the mess my family had been dragged into. But even as they spoke, I knew that the bigger mess was not on paper. It was inside my son's heart. When he came home from his flight, I saw the exhaustion on his face. Not from flying, but from knowing his life had been built on half-truths. He did not cry in front of me, but I saw it in his eyes. The way he looked past me, staring at the hallway where she used to walk down smiling. He whispered, "Mom, was I blind? Did I never see it?" I wanted to comfort him, but I also wanted to be honest. "You saw what you wanted to see," I said softly. "Sometimes love makes us ignore the cracks until the whole house caves in." The days that followed were heavy. Neighbors whispered. Some avoided me, afraid of being dragged into gossip. Others stopped by, pretending to bring comfort but really searching for scraps of scandal. I kept my answers short. I learned quickly that in a small town, sympathy can turn into curiosity, and curiosity can turn into judgment. My daughter-in-law's family did not make it easier. Some swore there was no twin, that she had been living a double life by choice. Others whispered that both women had grown up under troubled circumstances, and this was their way of surviving. No matter which version people believed, the damage was done. My son's marriage had become a headline without needing a newspaper. For me, the betrayal cut two ways. First, the shock of realizing a stranger had been under my roof. Second, the deeper wound of watching my son's trust collapse before my eyes. He stopped eating for a while, pushing food around his plate. He stopped laughing. He barely answered the phone when his siblings called. The sparkle of pride I had always seen in him as a pilot, a man in command of his plane, was gone. He was grounded by grief. I insisted he see someone. A counselor, a pastor, anyone. At first he resisted, saying he did not need help. But one night, he admitted he was afraid to sleep, afraid to dream of her face, only to wake up and remember the lies. That was when he agreed. Therapy became his lifeline. Slowly, I saw glimpses of the boy I once raised, fighting his way back through the storm. As for me, I rebuilt my routines. I checked the locks twice every night. I kept the light on in the hallway. I learned to trust my instincts again, to never dismiss the little alarms inside me. And I prayed. Not for her, not for the woman who betrayed us, but for the strength to keep going, for the ability to hold my family together in the ruins. What happened to her? The police uncovered more than I ever expected. Bank fraud, stolen identities, 2 passports under different names, enough to bury her in trials for years. My son filed for annulment, refusing to let his name be tied to hers any longer. Yet the legal papers did not heal the wound. It was like cutting off a poisoned limb, necessary, but painful all the same. There are still nights when I sit by the window and see shadows move in the garden. My heart jumps, expecting to see her reflection again. Then I remind myself she is gone, at least for now. But scars do not leave easily. The hardest part is knowing my son still loves the memory of the woman he thought he married. He told me once, "Mom, I do not know which moments were real. Was it her? Or was it someone else pretending? Did she ever love me? Or was I only a means to an end?" I had no answer. I only held his hand and let the silence speak for both of us. Life after betrayal is not about going back to how things were. It is about learning to walk forward with a limp. My family will never be the same. My trust will never be the same. But I am still here. My son is still here. And sometimes, survival itself is the only victory you get. Home is supposed to be the one place where your guard can fall, where you breathe without fear and sleep without glancing over your shoulder. For me, that sense of safety shattered the moment I realized the person under my roof might not be who I thought she was. Every sound in the hallway, every flicker of light, every late-night knock on the door turned into a question mark. Safety was no longer a guarantee. It was a fragile illusion. Looking back, I see how disbelief almost cost us. The strange bank transfers I brushed aside. The unfamiliar number stored in a hidden phone. The footsteps I heard in the dark but convinced myself belonged to my imagination. Each blind spot was a chance for danger to root itself deeper. Survival did not come from strength alone. It came from finally opening my eyes, from admitting that even inside your own house, you need to trust your instincts more than your routines. 2 moments echo louder than the rest. The first was my son's voice crackling through the phone while he was mid-flight, telling me something was wrong. The helplessness in that moment burned into me. The distance, the static, the fear of not knowing what waited beyond the next hour. The second was closer, more chilling. A call from inside the house. Footsteps on the other side of the wall. I felt the air change. I knew I was not alone. Those 2 moments, one above the clouds and one on the ground, tied my heart in knots and forced me to see the truth I had been avoiding. In the end, my son became the protector, not only because of his uniform and his training, but because he refused to let me carry the weight alone. He matched my memories with evidence, sifted through lies with me, and took the lead when my courage faltered. Watching him face betrayal and still stand tall taught me that protection is not always about shielding someone from harm. Sometimes it is about standing beside them in the dark until the danger passes. But I was not only a witness. I learned to reclaim my agency. I set the trap. I handed over the evidence. I found my voice in rooms where police officers asked endless questions. I made decisions in moments when fear tried to paralyze me. Survival is not only about being rescued, it is also about daring to act, even when your hands tremble and your heart pounds. When strangers hear the story, they ask me what hurt most, the lies, the betrayal, or the fear. My answer is simple. It was the invasion of trust. To know that a smile at breakfast could hide another life. To know that a family built on promises was only a disguise. That violation of intimacy lingers longer than any police report or court hearing. So I carry the lesson forward. I check doors, but I also check people. I listen closely to the whispers of my intuition, and I teach my family to do the same. Because survival is not only about escaping danger, it is about learning from the nearness of it, refusing to ignore the warning signs ever again. If the person who shares your roof was not who they seemed, what would you do? Would you stay silent until the danger passed? Or would you confront them even if your voice shook? This story is not only mine. It belongs to anyone who has felt the ground shift beneath them. Anyone who has learned that safety is more fragile than it looks. Subscribe now for more stories of family secrets, survival, and grit. And tell me, if this happened to you, would you run, record, or call for help first?